Just like how we all know and love the Ministry of Magic, the government, the American witches and wizards are more familiar with the Magical Congress of the United States of America, also known as MACUSA for short. MACUSA was created in 1693 after the International Statute of Wizarding Secrecy, which stated that wizards and witches had to live in secret without muggles knowing. Wizards and witches from all over the world over North America were elected to create and push out laws which kept the wizarding world safe and organized. MACUSA's primary goal at that time was to rid the entire continent of scorers, corrupt wizards who had hunted fellow magical beings for self-gain. MACUSA's second primary goal was the number of criminals who came to America from Europe and other areas because of the lack of laws which existed in their place. So basically, the criminals from Britain or any other place, as an example I'm going to say Britain here, because Britain had a very good Ministry of Magic which had a lot of laws and which had a good Ministry of Magic, they weren't able to do those crimes they needed. However, America was a very corrupt place at the moment. The wizarding world was in a mess. They didn't have a good Ministry of Magic, which is MACUSA. MACUSA was not as good that time. It didn't have the good laws, so it was much easier to rob and it was much easier to commit crimes in America. The first ever president of the MACUSA was Josiah Jackson. He was a very tough wizard, and in the first couple of years, MACUSA hadn't had any fixed meeting places, so that they weren't actually detected by nomads. Nomads are what the Americans called muggles. The very first thing which was enforced by President Jackson was the recruitment and to train R's. The first dozen people that volunteered to be trained as R's in the US have a special place in the Wizarding World's history. There are barely any R's and they face so many great challenges. These 12 names were as follows: William Fischer, Theodore Fontaine, Gandolphus Graves, Robert Grismidich, Mary Jauncey, Carlos Lopez, Mungo Macduff, Cormac O'Brien, Abraham Potter, Berthilda Roach, Helmut Weiss, and Charity Wilkinson. They were, challenged by so many obstacles out there that these 12, in the 12 of them, only 2 of them were able to live out their entire lives. The rest of them actually died in their missions. Charity Wilkinson was one of them, and he actually became MACUSA's 3rd ever president, and Theodore Fontaine was the second one, and his descendant is actually Gilbert, who is the present headmaster of Ilvermoney School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Also, as I think we all noticed, Abraham Potter's ancestor is the ancestor of Harry Potter, and they are both the Harry Potter's American wizardry faced so many challenges, like the descendants of the scorers who went into nomad communities and now had doubts and suspicion on the magical world. Like we saw in the Harry Potter books, the president of the Muggle world actually knew and had a connection with the Wizarding Ministry. But in America, the MACUSA and the nomad world have had no connection whatsoever. Initially, an enchanted edifice was created in the Appalachian Mountains as MACUSA headquarters, but over time this became quite inconvenient, and as more wizards started to congregate cities, it got much harder. In 1760, MACUSA had relocated itself to Williamsburg in Virginia, which was where the Preston Thornton Parkway was from. But due to some other reasons, once again, MACUSA now relocated to Baltimore, where the Preston Abel Fleming was from. But since the Revolutionary War and the Nomad Congress came into the city, MACUSA departed and left to Washington. It was also here where the country or kind debate had gone on, as thousands and thousands of witches and wizards came around for this extraordinary meeting. What this debate was about was whether the wizarding community was supposed to actually support their country to which made their homes, or to the global underground wizarding community. Was the wizarding community allowed to fight alongside the No-Majs for liberation from the British Muggles, or just was it not the fight for wizards and witches to fight and involve themselves in? The debate became severe, and a message was sent to the British Wizarding Ministry of Magic if they were fighting the war or not. A very simple answer came back, sitting this one out, and the American wizards sent back an even shorter one. Mind you do. Even though in the end the wizards and witches did not get into the fight, there were instances for wizards and witches to protect their fellow No-Maj neighbors. Also, the wizarding community of America celebrated Independence Day alongside the rest of the No-Maj society. Actually, not exactly alongside them, but you know what I mean. They celebrated, but they were not exactly next to them, as I said before. One very big law came around in 1790 when a scorer's descendant almost gave away the entire existence of the entire wizarding community, and not only in America but in almost every other country. This was issued as one of the biggest breaches of the International Statute of Secrecy law. From then on, wizards and witches were no longer able to marry No-Majs, unlike in the British British country, which we know is still allowed. But Americans said it was not allowed in America, and the British allowed in the British community, as we know of half-bloods. Basically what this means is, in Harry Potter we know that it takes place in Britain, and the wizards and witches are allowed to marry Muggles. But because of this big scorer thing, breaches, from then on, America and MACUSA had ordered a law which would not let the wizards and witches of America to marry No-Majs or Muggles. This was called Robert's Law. MACUSA's base went on to stay in Washington until 1890 due to some issue related to Sasquatches. MACUSA now needed a new base, and after several years, Wizards constructed the Woolworth Building in New York. It was a building in which both No-Majs and Wizards could use. If used by the correct spells, you would go inside into the Wizards and Witches base, where no Muggles and No-Majs could enter. The determination of law enforcement is the largest department in MACUSA. By the 1920s, Robert's Law was still held strong, and there were many subdivisions, like one of them issuing fraternization of No-Majs. One of the biggest differences between the US and UK governments were that in the UK, if someone does a very big crime, they were to be sent to Azkaban, while in America, they were executed. In the 1920s, the president of MACUSA at that time was Sir Fenna Piquery from Savannah, while head of Department Law Enforcement was Percival Graves. We all know both of them from the Fantastic Beasts series. Percival Graves was also one of the direct descendants of the legendary original 12 R's, Gandalfus Graves. Also, all wizards and witches were supposed to carry a wand permit, which gives information and license of carrying the wand that they possess. Unlike in Britain, America had 4 main wand makers, while Britain just had one main one called Ollivander. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure you guys hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and turn on notifications. And until now, and next time, see ya.